she says she got from her Uncle Gonzales along with the map.
And it's a cinch, Cookson said. You didn't see enough of it to know where they're at. I doubt that map's worth the paper it's drawn on.
Nobody's forcing you to join this hunt, Snood pointed out. If you fellas aren't interested, I won't have any trouble finding people who will be only too happy to go out there with me. Walter, I said, was a mining engineer. If he hadn't figured there was gold in those mountains, he'd never have gone in there. Spartacore's glance jumped around to have another look at me. You're a mining man, Brannigan. What do you think about Snood's proposal? Well, I said, Jake Walser's gold was no pipe dream. That much I'm sure of. That it came from the superstitions I'm also willing to gamble on, having talked some years ago with some rannies who saw him come out of there with loaded burros. I'll go along with Snood if he wants to outfit us. The deal, Snood said, calls for each of you to put up $200 cash on a barrelhead for provisions and equipment. I'll take care of the transport, but you'll each have to furnish your own riding animals and rifles. The banker continued. We'll be leaving here on the 5th, bright and early. Fishing in his pocket, Snood dropped on the table between us a small piece of rock, about the size of a hen's egg that appeared to be about 80% gold. This, he informed us, is a piece of the Dutchman's ore. And this, producing a second and somewhat larger chunk, we have on loan from the girl who was given it by her uncle, along with the map. According to what Gonzales told her, it came from one of those Peralta mines. Well, he said abruptly, you in this, aren't you? If not, he said, taking a squint at his watch, I'm catching the next stage north. Always willing to take a gamble, I was the first to put my money on the table. One by one, the others followed suit. Looking back on our monthly poker sessions, it wasn't hard to understand why Schroeder and myself had been offered shares in this venture. Obviously, Snood figured to go in there with a large enough party to make interference appear too costly. But Schroeder, a butcher by trade, was known to be a crack shot with pistol or rifle, the kind of galoot you'd want on your side in the event of trouble. It was easy to see why I'd been included. Having worked several years as a hand on the Tortilla Ranch in the Superstition Country between Black Cross Butte and Tortilla Mountain, I was known to have explored most of the canyons and several of the mountains, though mostly just looking and digging a little in places that seemed likely. Bob Cookson was a skeptical, hard-headed businessman who dealt in anything he figured would make a profit. Quintada had some kind of a horse ranch south of town, off the road to Tubac and the Mexican border. A persistent rumor had him tied in with smugglers. I imagined it was rifles to arm Mexican banditos. With that scraggly mustache and beetling brows, he might easily have been taken for a bandit himself. Schroeder said, I think you ought to get an expert's opinion on the age of that paper. But even if it was drawn by old Miguel himself, he had to have done it before those quakes. So what good is it? That whole country was shook up. Any landmarks left would sure as hell have been altered. With his glance seeking mine, I nodded. Sounds reasonable. Could have buried whole canyons. Well, parts of them anyway, and open up others. Cookson said, Chuck's been all through there. If that map is the one drawn by Don Miguel for his family, Brannigan will know, once he gets a good look at it, if there's enough landmarks left for it to do us any good. I said dubiously, maybe. After picking his money that was left from the card playing up off the table, Schroeder said he'd better be going and took himself off. Quintada, too, went out to get on his horse and head for the Nogales Road. A few minutes later, I said my goodnights. There wasn't much chance of keeping word from getting around once the 6 of us assembled at the OK Corral. We got out of there while the stars still shone and the streets were pretty much deserted.